anymore, man. They just want to get these games of StarCraft out of the way, apparently. Unbelievable.
No, these players are not getting any younger, despite the fact that this young man down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, the red Zerg player, it was known for a long time as being a very, very young player with a lot of time ahead of him. Seems like he's in a bit more of a rush these days. He is Reynor from Basilisk.
And the top left-hand side, our blue Protoss player from the Shopify Rebellion is Harstem. And I just have to take a moment to say, map makers, can we stop making bases at the edge of the map so I can't do a rotating intro? The amount of times I've hit the edge of Oceanborn the last couple of days specifically, it's like, it's really getting in my head. Like, I go to be like, Harstem, and we just like whack against the wall.
Oh, dude.
Such a
that is actually caused... As very appropriately, I was about to say, we have a forge coming down. I've been trying to write scripts that automatically cannon rush someone, and the fact that I can't use backspace to automatically center the nexus directly on where I want to be, because some of the maps are just so close to the edge, has been an actual problem. Oh, hell yeah! Harstem! Okay, so he's going Gate Forge. This is actually, all right, this is my groove, man. So he's going Gate Forge. This is going to be the 3 pylon wall. The idea here is you get that first pylon on up. That's going to be able to provide power for this location. After that first pylon finishes, you get your cannon and your gateway down. You can cancel the other 2 pylons because you fully wall in that cannon.
All right, well, this is going to be kind of wild. I'm glad you can explain it, so I don't have to. Nice and easy. What's that pylon for?
What is that extra pylon? What is that third pylon up north?
Is he worried about the pylon being surrounded too much and then the cannon's accessed? I don't know.
So that second, the pylon directly above the cannon did have a lot of surface area on it. So I think that maybe he's done some calculations about how if you do enough drone pulls, that would cause problems. I will admit that I have been in Japan and I haven't been able to fully test this as much as I would like to. But I think that this should be very difficult to actually clean up now, unless he does... No, yeah, Reynor's just going to abandon ship on this, and this is really awkward because he's not mining with any of these drones.
That's the big issue, right? These drones just sat there not doing anything. We're going to go after the pylon. There's no additional pylon here, so actually if we do lose the pylon, the cannons, all of these cannons coming up will be depowered. We're going to get a lot of the lings, but not enough as the single zealot shows up. Man, if there was one extra pylon, that would probably be great, right?
If there was one extra pylon, I think he
wins the game.
I don't want to say 100% guarantee, but I think he probably just wins the game there because the cannons are in range of the hatchery. That's like one of the big check marks there to ensure that he can get really big damage. But also Reynor just pulled workers the entire time for that. So he really didn't have any mining going on. He doesn't have any transitions. Not like he has a gas geyser or something behind this. It's not like he had a ton of extra resources and was droning up. That really was an all-in defense from Reynor. He had to clean that up. He had to shut this whole thing down. Now he's in a spectacular spot.
Yeah, it's funny how quickly the script flips right in a game of StarCraft, because now you got a few lings in the main base. They're hitting a pylon over here. Probes have to pull. More lings actually get into the main. Only just now can we build an adept as the cyber core is recently completed as well. Obviously no warp gate on the way. You can kind of name your problem for Harstem. It's probably going to exist right now is the Zealot tries to fight. We lose a couple of probes. We're likely going to lose more probes than what we've already lost as well. There's a third probe going down. Reynor continues to do very well. Man, it's a game of the slightest amounts, and it just wasn't quite enough for Harstem across the map. And now, Reynor really can just power up from here.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm thinking more about the cannon rush and the way that Harstem did it. So typically what I feel like I've usually seen from a lot of the cannon rushers, like a Grimmy or a Print Def or Boanon and stuff, is I think usually you're going for just like 2 cannons there, and then maybe you try and wall those in, and you'll usually wall in with like a gateway or something if you're really worried about stuff getting killed off or like the buildings actually going down, because the gateway just has so much more health. Going for the third cannon there, the cannons themselves have lower hit points, so they don't act great as a wall. And I do wonder if just instead of the third cannon, if you had gone for a second pylon there, easy to say in retrospect, but that usually is going to be enough. The downside of it is then you aren't one-shotting workers. You're one-shotting lings, but not workers. So it's kind of interesting trade-offs. Yeah.
Last cannon remnants go down. A couple of adepts will threaten, but I think they'd be crazy to jump in. Lots of lings to surround the queens nearby to add DPS. And Reynor will just make sure those adepts do not go anywhere. Harstem with his Oracle, and now the Warp Gate coming up as well. So he's going to try and transition this into something a little bit more normal as we continue through.
Yep. Now, of course, with all the little cannon rush shenanigans aside, and you were already talking about all these transitions and stuff getting set on up. The transition points in this game now, even though it kind of looks a little bit more normalish with the Stargate and oracles and stuff coming out, you have to remember that some things have change the timings, or like the openings basically change the timings of things. So the period where I feel like Harstem is going to be able to have, say, things like warp gate and be able to put on a depth pressure and be able to hit big 2 or 3 base kind of little timing attacks and stuff, a lot of that's going to be a lot harder to make work just because of the weird openings and the fact that Reynor had to make a lot of these early lings, so he doesn't have to necessarily make these lings later on because they'll be enough to deal with an early adept or a couple of early units. It just, I feel like there's a lot of things that give Reynor control in this game now.
You know, Fear Dragon, you weren't here last week, but we did officially nickname Harstem, new nickname, because, you know, he likes to nickname himself things every now and again. We did nickname him the Carpenter, and I just really feel like he didn't live up to the Carpenter there, because he should have known he needed a more solid foundation for those cannons. I don't know, man. I feel like he's not embracing the nickname I've given him, and it's just a little bit disappointed, you know.
I'm on board with that, though. I'm on board with the nickname, and you know what? Sometimes the Carpenter, he might blame the tools and say that Protoss doesn't have the appropriate tools and stuff. I know he's made some videos on that, but we all know it's the poor Carpenter that blames the tools.
Yeah. Well, the Oracles dive into the third base as you get rid of a few of these drones, and at least is getting a little bit of something out of this. Meanwhile, Reynor, though, he's just got no reason not to drone like crazy because he knows there's no pressure his opponent can realistically apply because of the delays he's had to his tech. So it just gives Reynor such a massive window to drone in. That obviously goes a long way to helping now, puts him into a great spot. And they're still coming up, Hatcher and the Lair all coming through. And yeah, a few more lings, couple drones, the ultimately upgrade all coming out as well.
Yep. Very comfortable spot in a lot of ways there for Reynor. One thing I will say that is still nice for Harstem is having these oracles up and alive. Please keep them that way, Harstem. Is he can continue to keep a very close eye out on what Reynor is up to. There should be nothing really pushing those oracles back besides just queens for quite a bit of time in this game. And also there is a bit of safety just because he knows really the only thing Reynor has had for a while and is going to have for a bit are just those lings, and those oracles really should be able to mount a solid defense there. So I like that Harstem is getting up all of his tech behind this off of just, you know, the 2 warp gates, not overproducing gateway units or anything. He's just going Robo, Twilight Council, getting up Charge, getting up Templar Archives, avoiding the supply block with 3 pylons all at once, and just really making sure that he can try to power up as fast as possible and make up for the early game.
Yep. No, just trying to take those steps forward. Those lings keeping on moving around the map. The Oracle's getting quite divey, but honestly still working. 3 more drones. One of them low HP, but not dead, which is the most important part. There's a couple more high Templar build up. The Archon count is growing. Harstem just kind of, you know, getting there for 3 bases. Storm even going to start as well, which against Lingbane Hydra, there isn't a unit in this composition of Reynor that Storm doesn't do well against.
Yeah, and as we all know very, very well, that Centrifugal Hooks upgrade, Wardy, no longer provides the extra hit points for those banelings, and that's something a lot of people have been, I feel like, hotly debating in the community about, is Storm significantly better because the Storm doesn't technically just like one-shot the banelings when they take every single tick of damage, but again, very, very close to dying, and they are really just one little tiny whack away from dying there, much like that Oracle that just died.
Oracle goes down as the couple zealots, everything else moving out to the front. The lings coming around as well. The extra banes come out. The drop load coming in. Storm is moments away from being completed. And that is going to give Harstem a much better chance against this Lingbane Hydra than he would have otherwise. The problem for me is just that Reynor sits at 4 base, 84 drones. Probably take a 5th base behind any attack he first sets up into here. Also has to find a way to keep a 4th base alive during these upcoming fights. Otherwise, he is going to start running out of resources extremely quickly.
Well, that was actually a surprisingly nice snag of killing off all those lings, because frankly, there are really only 4 banelings out on the map right now. There is a drop overlord as well, so I think that the banelings, yep, they're all loaded up inside the drop overlord, ready to go for some harassment, rather than actually joining up with a big fight of the army, because he's making more banelings for that one. I'm kind of with you as well. This has been such a weird, kind of strange opening that I feel like if you were looking for an example game to see how well Storm does versus the kind of current version of the banelings and stuff, this may not be a great example of what a standard situation would look like.
Good splits. Oh my goodness, we nearly lose the couple extra High Templar. Just great play so far from Reynor, moving his Banes around in such a way that it's very difficult to Storm. Baits another one there. And now we are going to commit through a little harder. These Banes, I was going to say, at least would probably get the super battery. It actually didn't quite go down for a moment extra. That was the last Storm, though, so no more splash damage really available. Archons don't really count, because by the time they get in range to splash, they're probably dead to these Hydras. And Harstem seemingly knows that as well. GG is called. Reynor more or less wins it on the first real commitment of an attack following that earlier game cannon rush.
Yeah, was even able to get those 4 Banelings from the Drop Overlord into the natural expansion, get a bit of extra economic damage during that. So Reynor was just looking like he was in firm control over everything. But yeah, I think you really can do the StarCraft Pro Player thing and just rewind the game back to the first big thing that went wrong. And it was the cannon rush. It was just not having the second pylon there. And it's kind of unfortunate. I do think it's one of those reasons why cannon rushes are very similar to knuckleballs and baseball. People are familiar with that, where it is a very specialized thing because it takes a lot of practice and a lot of games to develop that intuition of, oh, as the drones were pulling in, maybe it actually would have made sense for Harstem to use that probe that was pulling over to the cannon to just build one extra pylon there. That would have both walled in the cannon and made it very, very annoying to break, and would have provided an extra pylon there that would have potentially powered those cannons and everything else for a little bit longer. It's like those little things that really, really help out because it's so split second in terms of the decisions you have to make in order to make those kind of builds work. So I don't know, Wardy. I'm happy he went for it, but you know, I'm always a little sad when the cannon rusher doesn't win.
You know, before the game, he was like, "Watch this strategy." Like he PM'd me, and I was like, "Okay."
Well,
then after the game,
I also want it on record that you immediately, the last message before the game went to the loading screen was, "I want you to lose."
Well, that's because he's being really mean to me. But aside from that, we then came out of game, and Harstem, he messaged, he's like, "I can't believe I messed this up, ruffle." So at least he's in fairly good spirits. But definitely kind of on the same side as we are of like, he kind of had it, and he kind of messed it up himself because I actually think, especially just the fact that Reynor's drones didn't mind that entire time. Like, he had no choice but to bust. This wasn't like, there's only one pylon, so he will bust. It's he had to bust because he didn't build, he didn't mine enough during this to just let this go up or anything, so, yeah.
Before we even do player intros, I actually want to add one more thing. It's not just that. Reynor pulled his workers and pulled it past the cannons as he was like trying to intercept probes and stuff.
Yeah.
I actually think Reynor looked like that is just purely just spending time where the cannons and stuff were going up, and he wasn't mining. He wasn't getting any real value out of it outside of, I guess, if an extra probe or something had come. I really think like Harstem was in a very good spot there at that moment.
As in the top right-hand side, our red Zerg player who does get a little lucky that his opponent messed it up. The red Zerg from Basel, of course, expect him to do great today. It is Reynor.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, does he need a sharper hammer? Our blue Protoss player, the Carpenter, Harstem from Shopify Rebellion.
That was a really great name. Yeah, it falls
I'm
in
really
line.
sad you didn't pick up on the fact that I asked if he needed a sharper hammer. I really thought you were going to call me out. I was like, why do you want a
Oh no,
hammer?
it was ridiculous enough just to make sense.
Okay.
But maybe you want a sharper
I'm
hammer
glad.
so you can also like break things up so you can then carpet things down freshly.
A sharper hammer is just a pickaxe. You know that, right?
Yeah, sure, why not? Never really thought of it like that. So.
Oh my god, he's breaking down rocks. He needs to break down the rocks this game. Okay.
You do get hammers where the other side of the hammer's like sharp, right? So that you use to pull out nails and stuff. It's like the hook part. Maybe he needs that part to be sharper. Otherwise, he can't get fine enough nails out of. I don't know, man. Protoss units are weird. You need sharp hammers to put them together, okay?
Yeah, man. You know what? Harstem just needs to find his hammer time, and on that note, I think Harstem would look great in parachute pants. But what also looks great was his Oracle control a lot of that last game. He did end up losing one of the Oracles, but you were kind of mentioning it. He was finding a lot of tiny bits of damage in that game with extra drones here and there. Those things really do add up. Those things really do start to pull you back from a game where he wasn't looking so great after the start.
Absolutely, as we do have a few moments of just setting up kind of nicely. Natural got on location. Third hatchery goes down. Obviously, the timers are going to be much more normal this time around. Stargate's way earlier. The warp gate's actually on the way through. As our single adept shades up in toward the natural and is going to go see what's going on in the next couple of moments.
Yep. Sees the drones are there and knows that he's not getting all in, which I guess is never actually fully a given with Reynor, as he is not afraid to throw out some wild strategies here and there. But yeah, Oracle does just provide so much safety that I think he doesn't have to be too worried. But I'm curious, Wardy, what do you want to see from Harstem coming into like the rest of this series? Because I think we're both in agreement, right, that it's probably not just 100% the most standard things that you want to do, right? You want to do a little bit of a twist or a little bit of a shake up here and there.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, this already, I think he's already kind of taken my words away, like stuff like a single Oracle into like fast glaives, for example. Really fun kind of build that can catch your opponent off guard if they just miss scout slightly. I think Harstem's good enough to challenge Reynor. Like, I think overall Reynor should win, especially in a best of 5. I don't think Harstem's the player that can't like kind of put a fight to Reynor in their most recent meeting. It was just in the ESL Open Cup a few weeks back, number 197, so 3 weeks ago, but he did win there. And you know, to me, that's sort of a sign like, yeah, you know, Harstem's the kind of player who I think can come out and actually do well. I think, honestly, he just needs to do what he's comfortable with. You know, I don't think he actually needs to be too sneaky or crazy or cheeky. I think he just needs to do what he's comfortable with and stick to his game plan, because I actually believe his game plan is probably good enough to, like I say, put up a challenge. This is the kind of event where Reynor will perform. It's where Reynor's going to be his absolute peak. It's going to be the most difficult to beat him. And I honestly think for that, you actually just need to play what you feel you can play the absolute best in. Stuff like this, you know, is not unknown to Harstem. Like single Oracle into glaives. He was playing glaives for a long time after a lot of people were anyways, a little while back, so I like stuff like this, and I feel like if this was his plan going in, and this is what he's kind of thought about and practiced, absolutely stick by it. Just kind of see what it gives you.
No, I'm 100% with you on that kind of general sentiment. Just doing what your practice is usually going to be, in most cases, better than doing something that you're less familiar with. So these these adepts are going to be shading on forward, are finding quite a few of these drones a bit of a ways away from the queens.
I was going to say, that's a cancel shade, right? Because these drones are just kind of abandoned out here. They are absolutely shipwrecked on the top left of this hatchery. Now, we're going to be seeing a few lings that came in kind of go down. The first roach is starting to spawn. This time we might shade the adepts, and they do shade. Actually, she's kind of away from the fight more than anything. I guess that may be because there was a wall being built, so that was not access to the natural there. Now we will get into the natural if you want it. Of course, remember that attacks like this don't reinforce quickly because there's no kind of access to the prism or so. So reinforcing adepts are not going to join up quickly. As they do have, by the way, in general, just great handling from Reynor, dealing with stasis wards really well throughout this. And that's actually making this quite nice. The next few adepts actually not going to do too much either, so I think Reynor has handled this pretty darn well. It started off kind of bad. Those adepts to this, those drones to the side were a little bit stuck, but outside of that, yeah, he's been pretty great.
Yeah, I really want to compliment both these players, because Harstem is doing despite not having the fast reinforcements from a Warpism, like you were saying, he was shading the adepts into the main base while he was shading additional reinforcements over to the third base, while also putting in 2 stasis traps. And then it's just the additional level of compliments for Reynor, because he handled all of it. As we already know, Reynor is an unbelievably fast player, and once again, we get to see why that's so rewarding to have that skill set in StarCraft.
That's very true, as this one little cheeky adept, by the way, is still going. A few extra drones went down last few moments, so that's a nice catch, right? Like, anytime you can just get like a little bit of extra done, I think you're generally going to be very happy, and that seemingly is going to be the case now, as that last adept finally goes down. So that is nice.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, I look at that, Wardy, and tell me if you disagree. It's 16 adepts dying, and he did kill 14 workers, kill 15 lings. That's still not something Harstem's going to be thrilled about, right?
No. I mean, at the end of the day, right, like, well, this is nice. I mean, 5 drones on top of everything else. When you look at it overall, right, like, you know, he has slowed down a lot of mining as well. There's a lot of time where that third base wasn't mining and so on. So there's moments. The fourth base is definitely late too. I mean, if nothing else, it's going to give him time to get into the next stage of his game, which is now going to be Blink Stalkers and +1s, continue to bring that through.
Yeah. The follow-ups are definitely going to be there. I think that you're totally right. There's going to be some opportunities. I don't think Harstem is, dead in the water by any stretch of the imagination. But it'll be interesting to see how things shake up in the kind of next stages of the game with Spire, Baneling Nest, 1/1, and 1/1 not being armor upgrades, actually just being +1 melee, +1 missile attack upgrades coming all on out. And Reynor is really just getting a nice little spread of tech to actually deal with this next stage of the game.
Yep, as thing's going to get force fielded in. Yeah, Harstem is going to get into those double Colossi production, and Reynor being forced up into that Spire. All said and done, I kind of like where Harstem's at. I wonder if he would find a timing here, like when he hits like 4 Colossi, so like just hit one big push. If there's maybe something for him there. I mean, he's already set up with the Prism moving up the top. Of course, Colossi are not joining this just yet, but they're starting to wander over. I actually don't mind Harstem getting adventurous here. Army supplies are dead similar, and currently Reynor's army supply is made up of very low-tech units that don't quite have all of their speed upgrades, so they're not as powerful as they would want to be.
Yeah, he's only actually had time to morph in a couple of Ravagers just now. Doesn't actually have any Banelings out on the map, despite Centrifugal Hooks actually finishing up soon. So if Harstem did find an angle that he could commit into, it seemed like maybe he was going to be able to get something done. Reynor going for his patented Ling run-by on the other side of the map and sees a single Stalker and says, well, yeah, I can still bust through that. Attacks the wall, and thankfully for Harstem, Colossus popping on out is going to easily be able to bat that away.
Yep. It's going to be seen how Ling's going to run in again. Couple Stalks in the Adept going to fight through. The army pulls back over the left-hand side. 12 Mutos, 30 Zerglings all on the way out. The Mutos are a fun choice right now. Definitely can kind of run this game into a little bit of a chaotic spot, right? Where you can suddenly just be all over and maybe try and pull Harstem apart. It's going to be a good test to see how Harstem can kind of just, kind of curl up and defend a little bit, because he really is going to have to make sure that these Mutos do not get too much done, else we might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I think that is going to be the big question. Reynor did buy himself a lot of time, even a little Ling run-by, but now, as you were saying, the Mutos are not there to do a direct fight and find a ton of tough power there. Is looking to try and find some additional damage. And we do have another little Ling run-by with the Mutos also on the other side of the map. At the same time, Harstem is going for this big attack. The force fields locking out a lot of the army, but is he just losing too much back at home? Can he find the counter damage he needs to actually complement the fact that he's losing his third?
Yeah, Reynor doesn't have a massive bank. That's the one saving grace, right? So you can't necessarily afford a lot of stuff just rebuilding immediately. But he is still trilling in some extra links, some extra roaches. Harstem runs up here, is going to get this base, gets the few drones. He already lost a base himself, and the few Stalkers and the Phoenix showing up to fight those Mutas. I'm not immediately convinced they're going to be enough. We'll get rid of one Muta. We lost the Phoenix pretty quickly. I kind of feel like Harstem almost needed to keep chasing the army to some extent, right? Like, keep the Colossi shots going on these low-tech units and get that splash damage out as much as possible. And just stop it from ever getting to a massive Zerg that probably is too difficult to deal with. Because now, pulling back doesn't really seem like a win for you, because these Mutas have done so much. And the Zerg is still sitting on 4 bases fairly comfortably, 73 drones. Any amount of time given to Reynor right now, and he's going to be way better set up to deal with the Protoss army further down the line.
Yeah, and 12 Mutas, I feel like you need at least 5 Phoenix to really, really threaten this. And even then, it's going to be Phoenix without any Unpulse Crystals, so they don't have the range upgrade. That means that you have to give this a lot of attention. It's really going to be difficult for him to actually attack across the map while the Phoenix are dealing with the Mutas. So just attention, control-wise, there's not really an opportunity. That means that Reynor is the one that's able to seize an opportunity, goes for a big attack in, knocks out those force fields with the Ravagers. The Banelings finally start to find a couple of connections here, and the Mutas even able to try and flank back in. It does seem like the Colossus putting in a lot of work here. Is it actually enough for Harstem to hold on? I
like Reynor's final choice. He decides to just dive the Mutas onto the Colossi, and I like that, because I think he's got enough of a lead to just swarm. The only thing that would stop him doing that is the Colossi and their efficiency. But that doesn't matter. If the Mutas give themselves up to get rid of the Colossi, then I think you just hold down the Ling, the Roach, the Ravager button, and you just go, go, go. There's not really any need to slow it down at that point, and obviously, Harstem agrees that Reynor's probably going to take this one down. Taps out that GG. Reynor had money to spend still. Would have been much further ahead on supply than he actually even was. And that is going to decide our game number 2. Reynor off to a 2-0 start, so a pretty hefty lead already for him. And Harstem, I like what he did. I liked a lot of what he did. Just needed to do, when it comes down to like the base trade-esque scenario, I think he has to keep pushing for the army rather than backing away for a base, because he's losing way more than a base himself, right?
Yeah, it's also, man, I feel for Harstem a bit, because I feel like the way he was playing and the way that he's set up that 4-gate adept aggression with the oracles also joining in and making stasis traps, and I know that it can seem easy sometimes where you think, oh, we just shade the adepts in and then they just kind of do the work. But there's a lot of target firing involved. There's a lot of timing also with how do you set up the shades so that they're all going to arrive around different bases at the same time, while also controlling your oracles to plant the stasis traps and have, basically you want everything to be happening almost all at once or back to back. And Harstem, I felt like, did a really, really incredible job at that. I feel like he would have actually taken out a lot of lesser Zerg players, but Reynor is just so skilled, not only as a general good player, but specifically with multi-prong aggression and defense. He's just so fast. Man, I feel for Harstem. I feel like this is just such a tough opponent, specifically with how well he executed that. And I'm like, man, it doesn't look nearly as cool when you're up against someone like Reynor. Like, this is almost like a wasted amount of beauty of how well Harstem was executing that.
This is the kind of matchup where you're like, man, I'm so glad there's a lower bracket this time around, because I think Harstem can do well in a lower bracket, right? I think there's a lot of players you can put in a fight to, but, you know, if you draw one of the top 4 guys, you know, we're talking about, you know, your Serral, your Clem, your Reynor, your Max Packs probably, they're just really difficult opponents. Like, they're difficult opponents for anybody in this bracket, and, you know, to draw one of them first round last season, you would just that's just your run probably most of the time, unless you really pull off a crazy upset. Like I say, it'll be fun to see. And not saying that Harstem's in the lower bracket yet. I know I'm talking a bit preemptively. Just if he does not manage to bring it back here, at least he does have that second chance this season. Because you do expect Reynor to come through. You do expect Reynor to advance. You expect Reynor to probably be one of the guys absolutely competing for the championship here in Europe. So there's no shame in that. And obviously with the way he's playing right now, it definitely looks like Reynor can be the contender up at the very top that we expect him to be.
True. It's going to be very, very fun to see what Harstem busts out in game number 3, though, because like you said, I think when we were talking about that game number 2, it's not that Harstem has to do something unbelievably tricky, but I think he can throw out some kind of more aggressive or kind of cool little openings. And it's not that it's really wildly different from what is standard, but he has his own little ways of doing things, his own tiny twists, maybe in the way that he executes or maybe in the way that he rearranges small things in the build order. And I feel like that last game was a good example of just the way he kind of lined up all of the 4-gate adept movements and with the oracles and everything. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he is going to throw out in game number 3, because game number 1 was pretty wild. Game number 2 had its own kind of unique twists. And even though Harstem is sitting down 0-2, I feel like he is still, as you said, playing really, really well. So I have hope.
Harstem says, I have 3 more builds. This last one was my weakest one, and game 1 was my strongest. If you think about it, game 1 is definitely a mental win. And this one was almost a win. So in my mind, this is an absolute 3-2 for me. So by Harstem's logic, he's on the road to victory, man. Like, it's not quite playing out exactly as planned, but like it's looking good apparently. So hey,
he's gonna reverse sweep from here, right? And then that makes, if it's 3-2 for him already right now, then I mean he'll win 5-2.
Yeah, no, I mean I have no idea, man. Like, the math doesn't add up, but sometimes maybe that's the best place to be, to stay positive and to stay in the best state possible. Top left, doing some math. That doesn't quite add up. Probably because he kind of half did it on stream. He's our Blue Bros player, Harstem.
Down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have our red Zerg player. Thinks Wardy is kind of rude. It's Reynor from Basilisk.
Yeah, he was like,
yeah.
So what happened was he was like, is there a break? Question mark. And I was like, question mark, because I didn't know if he was like asking me, because we don't have breaks, right? We haven't had breaks all season. He's like, why are you question marking me? And I'm like, I don't know, because I didn't know if you're asking me or. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, impartial third party, Wardy. I read that and I thought you were doing a mocking question mark back at him. Oh, impartial third party with no context. I read that and I just saw Reynor asking an innocent question, assuming that he wanted to like go and take a break. And then Wardy just like passive aggressively throws out a question mark like,
wow.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe you should know by this point. Aren't you a professional player? Don't you do this for a living?
I thought
Does anyone else think that Wardy is really rude?
Well, I thought he was like surely there's a break now. There's always breaks in best of fives. And I was like, question mark? Because I didn't know if he was asking. But yeah, okay, well. That was just
Dude,
wild.
Slowly Falling is going to be so upset with you today.
I'm just getting fights, man.
Reynor, you talked about how, Oliveira is a hardworking and grinding world champion, unlike previous world champions like Serral and Reynor. Oh man, you're gonna be in the doghouse with your mod.
And the Zerglin house apparently is, yeah. I mean, what can I say? Sometimes the words just have to be said, man. I honestly, I'm just getting into fights today. Apparently, I'm just causing trouble.
It's okay. I'll be your friend today, Horty.
Even
when no one else will. Because certainly not Harstem and Reynor today. They've been just after you in every lobby.
Yeah. They have been, right? Like, everyone's after me. The admin was telling us off yesterday as well, saying we need to be ready soon. I'm like, probably.
Horty's just sitting here trying to do these EPT like 12-hour days. Even like the 3-player or 3-caster rotators. It's like, I know that I'm not going to be on for the end of the day. Katz is going to be joining us later, but he didn't have to show up earlier. Wardy's stuck here the entire day. He's working hard. He's working long hours. He's doing his own tournaments when, he's not doing EPT. He's just like trying to do his best, and everyone's just ganging up on him.
I know, like, I already have enough going on. I can't handle, like, fighting 2 different players at the same time, Like, can we just chill out a little?
Zombie just gonna like cancel you again with another smoothie game. It's like, I'm not even near you right now.
I'm just gonna cast on a barcode next time, man. stay out of eyesight. Next time.
Man, all right. Well, let's take a look at what's going on in the game, because I want to see if Harstem gets karma for bullying poor Wardy this entire time. Well, I guess actually Reynor did too. So maybe I don't know who actually gets karma if they lose on this, but we do have a Twilight Council coming out yet again here from Harstem, and 4 gateways finishing on up, or resonating claves starting on up Wardy. It is a repeat of game number 2
without a Stargate, right? So very minor difference.
That's true.
It was only 1 Oracle, and 1 Oracle was actually, by the way, I want to again point out, like, it's just kind of a fleeting thing, but man, it really tried to get Stasis Wards down, and Reynor pulled away from them brilliantly while all the Adept harass was going on. This time we just go straight to Glaives. It's kind of an old school thing. We haven't seen it as much lately. We'll see what Harstem does with it. We'll see how good his timing is. He'll put a 3rd down. Reynor is already on the way to Roach Run. He just needs to know to actually make the Roaches. That will be the next question, is that might be a minor cancel on the 3rd base and a rebuild here.
Yeah. Also, just important to mention, just because we were memeing a lot in the early stages, that Reynor did get a scout out on the Twilight Council, and he's already making a lot of Roaches, staying on just 42 workers. This is a very clear indication, or series of indications, that Reynor is very keenly aware of what he's up against. But knowing is not always the same as defending, especially when it comes to resonating glaive Adepts.
Yep, no, Adepts still have potential. This is why this build was so good for so long, because you still have to move correctly, you still have to deal with it properly. Now, of course, you expect Reynor too, but it ain't a guarantee is what we're getting at, as the first couple queens will begin to go down. So this isn't so bad, right? 3 queens go down, you're now going to get a few lings. There's only a single roach left behind here. Yeah, you don't know what to do, right? I mean, you pull the other roaches away. We actually commit a couple of Adepts in. But you know what? If these Adepts just go chase after those drones, we've once again got drones just separated from the rest of the party.
Sorry, forgive me for the silence, because I was counting how many drones have not been mining for now about 45 seconds to like almost a minute. It's almost 20 drones. Half of Ranger's drones are actually, sorry, now almost all of Rainer's drones were not mining for a second, as all the drones in the main base pulled away. He's barely been mining during all this. So if Harstem is able to find even one good shade over here, no, it looks like he's going to have to shade on, or recall out. It seems like Harstem was actually finding some really, really good indirect damage during all of that. But Reynor, he only lost 11 workers. Is that pretty good damage, would you say, for Harstem? I feel like it's pretty good.
Absolutely, because he put a 3rd base down as well early. So he has already now, he had a 10 worker lead coming out of this. He still has a few Adepts. Reynor lost a few units early as well, mostly Lings, but he also lost some Queens, so he's missing some Injects. Overall, I think it's absolutely enough. And, those drones killed plus the mining time lost, like you brought up, that's really where it hurts, because that's where Harstem is just mining so much more for a significant portion of time. He turns that into an advantage, and that's where he's at right now, still maintaining work a lead, still applying a bit of pressure with Adepts too. Love what he's doing so far. The only scary thing is Adepts over time don't maybe kind of hold out when it comes to a larger fight. So in theory, it would be nice if you could maybe trade out these Adepts little by little, you know, just get a little bit more damage done, but without throwing them all away at once, so you don't have nothing to help. And he's kind of doing that right now, just kind of shading a couple here and there. He's getting a few more drones. The Adepts from the right side are coming back in. Doing well.
Love it. Absolutely beautiful. And you can even see how late this lair is. So Reynor doesn't have tech. He is actually losing some of these roaches during these little trades because of the way that Harstem is kind of shading things around and splitting things up. Harstem is continuing to find worker damage, so he's got an 11 worker lead. He has a third base that's not only just there, it's established long enough that it now is going to have 2 shield batteries to help defend it. And Harstem is also getting closer and closer to getting out more immortals to help defend. Harstem has got everything going his way this game. He is doing such a great job with that follow-up from the early Adept pressure.
Yeah, no, he's doing a great job. Love what he's doing. We see the lab out of finish from Reynor, but it's so late. He's down in supply, and Harstem's only getting into better supply, right? His first Colossus is on the way soon. He's already getting extended thermal length. These are all things that are going to put Harstem into a better and better spot. You gotta love where he's at so far. Now, Reynor is good enough to pull himself out of these tricky situations, and that's what makes playing against him so terrifying, because he really can be in a really bad place, but then turn it all around. So don't count him out completely just yet, but, you know, the stage is set for Harstem to see success here in Game 3.
Absolutely is. Now, we are going to see Reynor try to get up his additional bases, but it's going to be that awkward situation where the Protoss player and the Zerg player are taking their 4th bases at the same time. It's not the most comfortable spot for our Zerg player here, but adding on an infestation pit as well. Kind of interesting move. Where do you feel like this is leading?
I don't know. Maybe just straight to Vipers because Colossi are on the way? Probably the best call.
That would make sense.
Yeah. He doesn't have like much of a bank to like roll out Swarm Host. It's very late to go Swarm Host as well, right? So you'd be doing you know, the earlier you get Swarm Host, the better, because the more time they have out in the game, the more Locust Waves they get, the better off you're going to be. So I think we're just going to try and get Hiver because he's going to need a way to deal with Colossi, and that's just going to be by abducting them. There's not really much other choice, so just trying to shuffle on up to that. Again, his 4th base only just finished, and his Hive does finish as well. He's going to put the Hydra Den down too. He could, of course, eventually end up on Lurkers as well. The Vipers should be the first calling point for Reynor here.
I think that's going to make total sense there, and I imagine that that's going to be what we see on the horizon. But first, is going to have to deal with the potential push out over here from Harstem. It's not the full army, it seems like. I think that there's still a little bit that's looking to join. But, that's going to be a bit of a problem because one of the Colossus gets caught very early on. War Prism saves it for the moment, but this is still a scary moment here for Harstem.
Yeah, Reynor actually really doing a good job there, just kind of finding an opportunity to maybe jump on his opponent and maybe just kind of catching a chance to maybe make something of what really was nothing. So I like that. I think that was very well played. Harstem also played well as well, though. The force fields immediately came down. They saved that Colossus, the Prism men to help out saving it as well. That's what you want to be doing from the Protoss player, right? If you get into a sticky situation, find your way out of it quickly as these Adepts just hammer in for 11 drones. Reynor's economy is not being left alone so far in this best of 5 Game 3.
I mean, I think it's actually low-key one of the most underrated, one of my most favorite underrated aspects of the Resident Engraved Adept opening is if the game does get to a good transition point and you do move into the later stages, having Resonating Engraved Adepts and just being able to warp in 2 Adepts in the later stages of the game and just send them in to harass, it can just turn the game around. You can literally just turn entire games around with those 2 units finding a nice opportunity at the right time, at the right moment. Not actually unlike a really, really nicely timed burrowed roach play, and the Tunnel and Claw Roaches finding a bit of damage over here in both the natural and the main base.
Only one observer on the map as well, so we're not immediately ready to deal with this detection-wise, right? So, yeah, cool play, and we're going to get a bunch of probes back already. We do threaten at the front with the rest of the army, but looks as though Harstem got a couple force fields down, a couple shots off, but this is still him just losing a lot of probes, and that is adding up. That's definitely a cool play from Reynor. Those tunneling claws absolutely dealing damage, and I think he'll be coming out of this very happily.
Yeah, nearly actually a little bit over equalizing the damage he took from those two adepts earlier on. But all this is also buying a bit of time and space for Reynor, because you mentioned the Lurker Den, and the Lurker Den of course is finished up, but those are Lurker upgrades, or the Lurker upgrade is still going to be very important to get before you can really take advantage of anything. He hasn't even morphed the Lurkers in just yet, but all of that time has really been bought here for Reynor without having to worry about a big attack. And if you look at the army composition for Harstem, it is still a very scary looking army with, you know, Colossus, and there's more immortals in there than before. We have 6 immortals, but it is largely basically the same army composition as a couple of minutes ago. In the meanwhile, Reynor has the Vipers added on. He's morphed in 10 Lurkers that have the upgrade. He's getting up adrenal glands. He really has been able to make the most of this time with his tech transitions.
Yeah, let's see what these Vipers can do. I'm a little worried that Harstem's out here right now. If he had Storm and he had like a couple of High Templar ready, I'd love it. He actually just abducting the Immortals, which ain't so bad, because Immortals are the kind of thing that can chunk down the Lurkers, so I love getting rid of some of those when Lurkers are going to become, you know, a big part of our defense. Now, Ling's in the main base. You do lose a lot of drones as Zealots just get into the natural. So again, Reynor's been bleeding out workers all game long. He does have one Viper with energy back. Well, he actually just lost one Viper as well, though, so that's a little painful. Harstem supply looking good at the moment, especially after he just took down a bunch of drones. Reynor does not have a lot of rebuilding potential, and right now doesn't seem to know what exactly he actually wants to rebuild. Or is he just lava-starved? I think he's a little bit lava-starved, in fact.
Yeah, that's going to be a big problem. It's a minor note because it doesn't matter just yet, but I do want to mention the Ravager Crows of Biles did manage to kill off 2 of the 3 observers. Harstem does still have that one observer providing vision, but he does have to be careful with it, because if he loses that, he cannot actually see these Lurkers anymore. He doesn't exactly open up Oracle or anything either, but Lurkers are starting to get picked off over here. Stalker gets abducted by the Viper instead of the Immortal. I think a bit chaotic here, as both these players really are just throwing units everywhere right now.
Yeah, it's obviously messy, because attacking into Lurkers is never going to be like a pretty situation. The Stalkers in the main base are going to recall out of there. We still have Immortals and Stalkers just joined up in the center. A couple more Lurker shots coming through. A couple more Roaches and Hydras are firing. And just getting some extra damage done as our Zealots continue back over the left side. We are at 43 drones now killed, because the Zealots have just continued to hit these mineral lines. We've lost the natural expansion completely as well. The Reynor supply is struggling along, and it does definitely look as though Harstem is taking a big step back into this game.
Yep, 76 workers killed by Harstem this entire game, and 45 of those in the last couple of minutes or so. Maybe not even last couple of minutes, maybe just last minute or two. But here we have Reynor still with a scary-ish army, still has an opportunity to get something done, but this may very well be the kind of final hurrah, and not quite finding the angle he was looking for at that time. Harstem is just too prepared, and Harstem is already kind of looping around this army of Reynor, sharking around for it, and may even be able to find the hatchery as he's doing another Zealot run by. This is beautifully done by Harstem, just to kind of keep his lead so far in this game.
Yep, no, he's doing things well. Harstem, I always felt like one of the greatest players at just that, you know, always having a Zealot run by ready. It's one thing that I feel like he's always been extremely, extremely good at, and right now, just doing this brilliantly, right? Moving the main army one side, Zealots on the other side. We've seen it throughout the game. The Zealots have been great for him. Great double feedback on those Vipers to set up for this incoming fight. And yeah, you should just be able to clean out that bottom left base and eventually just slowly push in towards the base of your opponent. The only thing that's going to hold you off there is the threat of the Vipers, and obviously as well the threat of the Lurkers as well, which is just a little scary to kind of push straight into without taking a moment to consider how good they could be.
Yeah, and don't even sleep on the fact that these Lurkers are actually quite softened up, even from just these gradual storms. A lot of them are quite low on hit points. They are not going to be able to last very long, especially with that many Immortals on out. I think a couple more Lurkers also just died, but Reynor also just is remaking a handful of them. I think he's putting all of his eggs in the Lurker basket at this point and saying, all right, Lurkers are the big power unit I have right now. I've been keeping the Lurkers and the Vipers alive. I need these 2 units to basically win me this game. And I don't know, man, he's gonna need some of the sickest blinding clouds on all of the Immortals, and I don't even know, the Lurkers just basically annihilate this army for him to come back in this now.
Yeah, this is this is basically hoping that the Lurkers pull off a miracle, but Harstem's doing the right thing just in case this game progresses onwards, which is to get the Stargates up right, slowly move into potentially carriers. That's something which Reynor's army has no current answer to, and in theory, because he's going to be busy trying to max out, he should never be able to afford a Spire and like a ton of corruptors and stuff. So what Harstem's doing eventually will win him this game, unless, like you say, there is a disastrous fight where lurkers do way more than Harstem should ever let them. It's not impossible. We've seen lurkers take ridiculous fights in the past. They are going to burrow up in the perfect position right here, and Harstem cannot fight up there. So, well, that's a base that Harstem will lose. Lings into the main as well. I mean, this is the kind of start that you might expect everything to fall apart for Harstem from. I mean, he's still very far ahead, just, yeah, not the greatest of ways to start things off here.
Other side of the map that we do see a handful of these Zealots, Stalkers, and a couple of Immortals doing the counterattack. So I like the decision there from Harstem. It is going to secure him the victory, as even that little counter swing is not going to be enough.
Yeah, I like it. Just, you know, basically, like you say, it's just, you know, you can't really fight those lurkers easily. Why bother? Why not just go across and basically checkmate him? Makes perfect sense, and Harstem does find himself a victory. So we're going to go 2-1 in favor of Reynor. And Harstem going to fight back that a little bit. You know, we got excited about this series today. This is absolutely going to be one of those scenarios now where Harstem can show us. We've seen glimpses of it in games 1 and 2, but this really is him showing us, hey, look, I've got potential in these games. Like, I can win these out. So that's very exciting to see. Going to be moving on into game number 4 of this in just a second. Big map as well. Alkaini for our 4th map is going to be pretty darn sizable, so definitely something to watch for. Gold base available too. And I'll see if Reynor does anything kind of special himself. Obviously playing pretty standard throughout. Just kind of dealing with whatever Harstem kind of, you know, gives him to deal with. But, you know, it's not unlike Reynor to sometimes sneak in a build where it's like, okay, you deal with what I'm going to do to you. You deal with an attack. You deal with some aggression. And maybe something along those lines. So we'll see if Reynor mixes it up at all. Like I say, with the gold base available, maybe there's something you can utilize with that. But first, we're just going to have to get into this game and kind of find out what the initial plans will be.
Yeah. I feel like this is also, it's now been long enough since game number 1 that I feel like this would maybe be the time that I think, maybe you go for the cannon rush again, because it seemed like Reynor, it seemed like you kind of had him at a checkmate, and maybe he mishandles it again, because not that many people are cannon rushing these days. But I will say, in my little notes, I have Alcyone not really great for there's nothing really you can do at the ramp. It feels like this is kind of a weird map for the cannon rushes, so I'm not expecting anything like that. But I'm also really curious, Wardy, how would you feel about another Resonant Glaive Adept opening? Because gosh darn it, Wardy, he won me over with those last 2 games of how well that can go sometimes.
I'm into it, honestly. Like, I think he's doing well enough to make it work. I think he's doing well enough to justify it, so I'd be down, man. Like, I'd be kind of down. It's obviously decent for him so far. The only thing is, if you do it too much, does Reynor figure out, like, your tendencies? Does he figure out how to punish it? Maybe that's where Harstem, like I said, he's got a few different builds planned. Maybe that's where kind of each build kind of lets him maybe do something similar in a different way, or just does something completely different just to try and take advantage of what he's been doing earlier in the series as well. As in the top right, the man who is making his 3-2 prediction a little bit closer to reality, it is going to be Harstem.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, the red Zerg player still sitting at match point here. It is Reynor from Basilisk. I will say, Wardy, the one time Harstem has won a game in the series, it's when he and Reynor both did not flame you in the lobby. And once again, nobody flamed you in the lobby. So maybe that's the secret, man. Maybe that hostility is creating like bad juju mentality for Harstem, and as soon as he clears that all out, he's golden.
Maybe the hostility fuels Reynor, but the calmness soothes Harstem. I don't know, something like that.
I agree, Wardy. I think that Reynor is a hostile and bad person, much like your other claims about how Serral is not hardworking like Oliveira. That's a great point, Wardy.
I'm being put on blast.
Sorry, I'm really enjoying this. You got me like, for one day, Wardy. This is just gonna be how I spend it.
It's like this one home story cup. We had one game where lurkers sucked, and I was like, man, lurkers are not good. Because in this specific game, the lurkers were not good. And for the entire rest of the weekend, anytime there was a lurker, Everyone just looked at me. It was like, hey, Wardy. Even when I wasn't casting, I was like sat downstairs just chilling. They were like, hey, Wardy, Lurk had just killed a probe. I'm like, oh my god, leave me alone.
I know. It's just so you're so fun to bully. I'm not gonna lie. As someone who has been bullied, you are very fun to bully.
It's really one of my redeeming factors in life, I think. Like. That's one way to take
Well, you did call this, by the way.
Yeah, not on this side, though.
It.
This is wild. Like, that's just...
The best part is, this is so easy to scout. You just accidentally scout it.
You don't even get all the minerals off this base, right? Like, you can't reach the far ones, so it's like a 4 base.
No, you can't.
So there's got to be something aggressive planned from Reynor.
Wardy, I have prepared my entire life for this moment. I made a useless fact video to determine when you are 1 hex too far away from, the mineral patches, how many more workers does it take to saturate? Hold on, I need to look up my spreadsheet of useless facts, and I can tell you how much less efficient the mining on the opposite side is.
You know what? Then it's almost like it's not useless because now we're going to make it useful. Now we're going to use this information.
It's 99% useless. This is the 1%.
This is the 1%.
We're in the 1% right now, Wardy.
Oh my god, finally I've made the 1% cut. Let's go. Oracle is coming across.
This is taking too long for me to look up, so
yeah.
We'll do it later.
We'll do it later. All right, Lings are going to jump on the 3rd. Harstem just double Oracle coming in. Nothing really spectacular about the build, and I only say that because each game so far really has had a twist or a turn. Cannon Rush, 1 Oracle into Twilight, straight up Twilight and Glaives. This is just triple Oracle, right? This is just very normal. And like I say, very intrigued as to what Reynor is truly planning off of that gold, because I really don't know. I mean, he's just going to mine out the other side, and apparently, yeah, that's just the plan. Apparently, that is just the plan. That's wild.
Yeah, so I don't have the exact numbers for percentage of decrease in income, but in order for you to need to add an extra worker to saturate the like a far enough away mineral patch, you need to be 3 hexes away from the minerals, and that's the point where a 3rd worker won't just bounce away from the extra mining. So adding a 3rd worker, I think, like for each one of these mineral patches, I don't actually think the mining will be that bad, because you just oversaturate like a little bit, and you actually should be pretty close to fine.
Yeah, okay. Then I guess I'm kind of down for it. What a weird way, though. Because the thing is, though, usually when you take a gold, the benefit of the gold base is like, hey, look, I get to mine, a good, the same amount of minerals with less drones than usual, right? So, man, I'm not being funny, though.
Yeah,
like, this far patch is actually like, okay, there's the downtime. Okay. But yeah, we see Reynor, he's kind of setting up now, and I think with Roachling on the way, I think his idea is he's going to start pushing forward, and I think that's kind of why he took this base here, because he's going to be able to push forward from a position, but now he's just going to drone as well, and like I say, that's going to catch me off guard. I really do not know, man. Like, this is kind of wild. Queens are pushing up, we are pushing through the middle, but it feels like with the drones, he shouldn't be fully committed to anything. He's definitely sending these roaches to try and find something, though. Man, this is actually insane.
Yeah, I would have dropped this so long ago if he wasn't just still droning. Like, I'm 500% with you right now, Wardy, because none of this would matter if we were just like, it's a forward hatchery. He's going to get aggressive, because this is how No Regret qualified for GSL Codas multiple times. But he's droning. He's transitioning this out.
Yeah. That's what's weird about it. Like, it wasn't that weird when it's like maybe put a couple of drones on the gold and it's very far forward, so you get a good push off of it. You creep spread forward from it and everything else. The fact that now we're like, and he did oversaturate, by the way, so he has put those extra workers on to get full, usage of this. Yeah, he keeps droning. He takes care of the base. That's the part that fascinates me. That's the part where I'm like, man, let's see how this all turns out then. Income-wise, Harstem has generally been ahead throughout the game, though, so only just now is Reynor really starting to take a lead himself. Like I say, it's weird because usually the gold base, it gives you more money on less workers, so you don't have to build as many workers, so you can begin your all-ins or your attacks sooner. In this case, you build just as many workers because you have to kind of send extra to fully saturate, so then how beneficial really is it? Like, it is fascinating. What a wild style.
I'm convinced at this point that it's all just building into the mind game, and that's why he also made all those early roaches still and did the little fake push across the map. I think he was hoping to force an overreaction from Harstem, get Harstem to do something like throw down 3 extra shield batteries or something at the third base and to cut a bit of his tech in order to get up more units a bit earlier on. But Harstem didn't really overbuild warp gates. He didn't overbuild shield batteries. He still has pretty decent tech. So that's kind of where I feel like I'm landing on this. And I'd love to hear what Reynor's thoughts are later on this. But it is, I agree, a fascinating strategy.
Harstem did build 5 oracles as well, so he definitely set up to maybe be a bit more defensive, right? As these lings are leaping forward and using this creep to just catapult onto that army for a little bit. It's just going to push that back. And that is one thing, like his creep really is good just through the middle of the map, now taking base 5 to the south side of the map as well. So, you know, if that's part of the reason he took this, that has absolutely worked. The creep is pushing up the ramp in toward Harstem's base right now, so it's getting to be a real problem.
It most certainly is, and unfortunately for Harstem, he does only have the 1 observer out on the map right now, but it's difficult to actually push out because all of those Ravagers and Roaches are basically pouncing on his army every single time he even pokes a little bit further out. He picks off 1 Creep Tumor, has to back off. 34 Banelings also are about to finish up, and they are going to have Baneling speed as well, so I think this is going to finally, at long last, be a bit of go time here for Reynor as he's hit the maxed out point. He's going to have a lot of units, and waiting for +2 weapons, is it actually still, do you think, worth it to wait for +2 weapons? Or you just go since he's maxed out now?
I think you just go. Melee is not as important as it used to be. A lot of these lings are going to die well before they hit anything, so I think if you want to attack, you just attack. I don't think +2 really does anything on the Zerg side. Obviously, it helps to some degree, but I don't think it's worth, like you say, waiting around for. I think sooner is better because the less tech there is up for Harstem, the less Archons available, etc., the better off this becomes. Those first couple of lings do not successfully set up those stasis wards. Now, it takes a few more units to do that. First Storm coming down, and Oracle knocked down by Queens as the first few units just kind of bleed up this ramp. Well, obviously Harstem does have Storms to play with defensively. That Storm was okay, but a few of the Banes got past and exploded anyways, so still dealing some damage. Next Storm on the ramp. I mean, these Storms are nice until you realize there's no follow-up Storm. Usually you need 2 Storms back-to-back because that would actually kill the Banes. Instead, the Banes are blown up on units just on low HP, which means that the Storms didn't really generate any sort of damage.
I'm with you on that. I think the saving grace there was the stasis trap trapping those lings and those couple of those banelings at an angle where it basically made it almost impossible for Reynor to really push forward on that left-hand side, which meant that the Oracle could continue to work away at that army on the left-hand side without the fear of the Queens doing any kind of damage. Harstem tries to go for a little bit of Warpism harassment during that as well, just to quickly note, but then the shield battery was actually, while overcharged, healing up the Archons really, really well on the south side of the engagement. So I feel like I'm with you. There are definitely some things that were not really seeming to go well for Harstem, but then the couple of things that were going well went really, really well, and that's the reason why he's able to hold on actually so strongly there.
But he did push this back. He did force Reynor away. Reynor, who's on 10 less workers than Harstem is. Obviously, the Prism showed up on the other side as well, and that's been really taking the attention of Reynor a little bit now too, so that benefits Harstem. This Prism play, those Zealot counterattacks once again delivering for him at the moment.
Ooh. No!
Not if you lose it, but somehow we get out alive.
1 shield still remaining. That's, 0 damage taken to the hull. Perfect play there from Harstem. Absolutely calculated. The Carpenter always measures before he makes his strikes.
He is so precise. As we do have our Ling Bane Ravager continue to gather up. We do have the extra carries on the way, plus 1 air weapons is coming through. We continue to get this up and running as you just see our army continue to get around. And
the gold is still mining because the mining is so bad.
Yeah, usually the gold would be long gone by now. Maybe that's the strategy, man. He makes the gold last longer than anybody else.
There you go, man. You have to be a world champion of Reynor's caliber to know how to keep getting golds this late in. He's not just a one-off gold. He's a long-term gold winner.
Yep. Very true as Ravager Bane continues to just chip away, doing a little bit more damage up towards this base. He's going to be able to knock those rocks down, so the rocks will indeed fall. Let me just open up the map. As Harstem's been building carriers, by the way, but he doesn't have many of them yet. That's a great storm on the right side to start. He does get the second storm, so you see the Banes actually dying before they reach units this time. That helps a little bit more. Does Harstem have enough? Absolutely. Horrible fight from Reynor. Just melts. And Harstem is going to bring it to 2-2.
Yeah, wow. I mean, what a game and what a way for that to kind of end, because I feel like things were going really well for Harstem at the end for sure. I thought Reynor was maybe still more in it, but like you were saying, that final fight did not go well at all for Reynor. I was looking at the end of that game, Morty, and I'm really curious what your thoughts are. I felt like I was looking more at Alcyone and just how things are laid out, and the carriers were going to be the big next stage of that game for sure. But I was looking at how Harstem would try and take a 5th base, because I think that Reynor was showcasing how great the angle could be potentially to try and put pressure on, but that Harstem's shield battery placement and just his army placement in one position could defend all 4 bases almost. But as soon as he tries to extend to a 5th base, I felt like it was going to be a lot more limited, and I actually was surprised Reynor went in for that last attack. I really thought he was just going to try and hold out, take the rest of the map as maybe the carriers are trying to do some big push out and then go for an attack. Yeah. And just try and deny a 5th base. I was a bit surprised by that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Reynor felt pressure to go before too many carriers were there. I mean, I felt like that was not a bad time to attack in theory, right? Because your opponent is switching to carriers, although not super quickly. It's not like he had like 4 carriers in production. He only had the 1. So, you know, he had 1 carrier up, and then he had... he had 1 carrier up, and then he had, like, you know, 1 more on the way. So it wasn't like a huge investment that wasn't then, you know, available just yet. So I think that helped Harstem out in terms of making it okay for him. Yeah, I mean, I think Reynor maybe was just realizing as well, like, his drone count wasn't what he wanted it to be, right? Like, he was behind on drones, and he had been for a little bit, and maybe just felt as though he did kind of get this going. Now, okay, Ravi, you said you were going to be my friend, but, like, now you're not, so...
Yeah, I don't know. Harstem just DM'd me also, right, like 2 seconds before the countdown timer finished, and he's like, Wardy is an absolute idiot. Be sure to tell him as well. I'm just like, you know, this is the vibe of a man going to a game 5 who's just enjoying himself.
Yeah.
I love it.
Top right hand side. I don't even know which of these guys I prefer anymore. Top right is going to be our red circle Reynor.
And down here in the bottom left-hand side of the map, the blue Protoss player who has won every game he didn't bully Wardy in the lobby for. Just bullied Wardy in the lobby. Is he going to lose now? It's 2-2. It's Harstem.
The actual caster curse.
You know, it's funny because it's not even a caster curse. He would have cursed himself. If he loses this, I think we can directly point back to the fact that he won every game. He didn't bully you in the lobby, and that he chose to bully you in the final moments of the final countdown to go into game 5.
But it wasn't in the lobby.
Truly, it was in
DMs.
It was in. Oh, you know what? That's true. It wasn't in DMs. But he told me to tell you. He told me to tell you.
Yeah, because he wanted to bully me, but not in the lobby. He knows.
Oh, okay. So you think the curse is tied to the lobby chat, not DMs?
Yeah, why not? Crazy enough, it could be the case.
I'm on board with this meta. I'm on board with this theory. We'll find out how true it is, if how on point our analysis of curses are.
I have to say, I'm impressed by Harstem. You know, you said he came in with a bunch of different builds, and each game has been very different, right? Like, he's not done the same thing twice. He really has been mixing up game after game. You know, even when he did Glaives back-to-back, it was one with a Stargate, one was without. The timings are very different. The amount of pressure is very different. The follow-ups are very different. It has been, you know, in a scenario where a lot of players in PvZ will just play Stargate, Triple Oracle, and then maybe diversify slightly between Charge or Blink right as the next step. In a meta where that is so prominent, Harstem has really come in just, like we say, just kind of doing different things every game, and you know, that's refreshing to see, and it's working out for him because I think the mix-ups have never let Reynor kind of fully settle into a groove, and Reynor is kind of one of those players where if he gets fully settled, he really can start to have a very good time.
Yeah, you know, I will say, Wardy, there are 3 Protoss players that when you give them time to prepare, I think these are like the 3 Protoss players that come to mind from. God, I will never get tired of how fast and funny the probes look when they go through this accelerated zone. Sorry, it always distracts me. But there are 3 Protoss players I always think of. The first is Drogo, who I think when you give him time to prep and figure out the builds and then practice execution for them, he looks really good. Mana, I would say, is another one. And then I think Harstem, when you give him time and say, here's an opponent, you're playing 1 best of 5 against them. That is all you're doing for this day. That is your job for the next day or 2 or a couple of days is to prepare to play this one player. I love what Harstem was oftentimes able to bring to the table with that. I think that's actually one of his strengths. And I do feel like, weirdly enough, we talk a lot about how Terran players benefit from that in, say, things like GSL and stuff. But man, Harstem really shows what a Protoss player can do when they have time to prep.
No, he really can. I was going back to Glaives, by the way. We did like the Glaives that one time we saw it early, just as a straight up Glaives. It was a very convincing lead that he took with it, and he's going to go Glaives again right now. Solaris, which is a fast map, it's got acceleration zones to help the Adepts move across with, and this is just going to be that 4 gate without any Prism or anything, right? So it's just going to be, hey, if you want to reinforce, you are going to run them across the map. Again, this idea of, hey, I want to throw this 3rd base down, I want to get that down early, so you'll have that 3rd to follow up with as well. That was a big part of the reason why he saw success in the earlier game he went Glaives, because the 3rd was so fast, he was able to do a lot with that and from there.
Yeah, I absolutely love this decision here. And I think what's also going to be very, very cool to see is Reynor already turned down the Roach Warren. I think last time he stopped droning at 42 drones as he started the Roach production and really tried to deal with this pretty handily. But again, scouting it is different than actually executing the defense. But I think once again, he's going to know exactly what's coming. He's stopping at 42 drones. He's making the Roaches. In a lot of ways, it's a repeat of the previous game. But again, it's going to come down to the execution. How well can Harstem and Reynor both execute on their own ends?
Yep, them Adepts is going to start moving forward. First Queen going to eat a Transfusion. One Adept already going down. We do get up the ramp. I mean, he's not finding like the exposed units like he did earlier, right? That's already very apparent, I think. The Evo Chamber going to make it so you can't really reach the mineral line here, so you're just kiting against Lings. You go into the natural. There's going to be Queens nearby. Reynor is very on top of it this time and really just making a display of how different you can go from one game to the next. Because this is so far being a shutdown. Now, here are some Adepts on the other side. A lot of Harstem's damage in that earlier game came beyond the initial Adepts as well. While the initial Adepts did well, it was the extra Adepts that then continued to find damage. So maybe there's something to be said there, but overall I will say that I think Reynor handles this brilliantly. Harstem is a couple of workers ahead, but Reynor's already back to droning now on his way to his lair. I don't think he's going to be all too worried about how this all went down.
No, not at all. Reynor's going to be thrilled about this. This is going to be a very different kind of game from the previous one where Harstem was able to garner himself a solid lead and then make decisions that maintain the lead. In this game, now Harstem doesn't trade out against all those early game units, so that means that Reynor could actually theoretically, like, it's not that what he's actually doing right now, he's droning up, but there's a world where Reynor could maybe have just made a couple more units and then actually try to threaten the 3rd base or try to put on a little bit of pressure. So Harstem has to respect that. He has to respect that potential. So getting up and trying to get up more Immortals a little bit earlier on, warping in some sentries, trying to keep it active with the Adepts that he still has out on the map right now, and trying to just make sure that Reynor's staying at home. But Reynor, he just gets to drone up behind all this. He knows that he doesn't have to worry that much, because not only did he deflect the first wave of Adepts, he kept his units alive to deflect additional waves.
Yeah. No, I mean, Harstem sets up with this Prism. He's going to get ready to go. He was ahead on workers for quite a while. Just recently, Reynor took over. And look at all the things he's building right now that would not be ready for this attack, right? Melee upgrade, roach speed, Spire, all of these drones. These are actually all the things that Reynor is building that he's actually not really necessarily going to benefit from straight away. Harstem not chilling out at all. Walks straight up this ramp. Very close to killing an Overlord there. That would actually supply block Reynor just a tiny amount. A couple of Adepts showing up. Some more drones going down. I mean, Harstem, I do feel like, is going to have to send this. He's obviously not set up to play a longer game. He's going to warp in some more Adepts, and this is going to be the question mark of, can Reynor get enough units out in time after the recent wave of tech that he's just invested into. Force fields coming down. Queens will transfuse each other. Force fields keep on replacing a couple that get knocked down. We do see extra Adepts on the way in. Some supply is really not bad. Equal army supplies is generally a good place to be.
Yeah, this is a very scary moment here for Reynor, especially if he ends up losing a handful of these Ravagers on the front line. Immortal Barrier does get popped, but there's not actually that much extra DPS to kill off the Immortals. The Adepts doing a great job staying on the front lines, even a couple of drones being pulled in, and because the Adepts are actually doing counter damage. Just two Adepts on the other side. 16 workers killed.
And Harstem's now attacking behind this as well, so he does need to do something, but he is kind of going to have a follow-up to it as well. His army's just not taking any damage. Now Adepts on the left side base, and Reynor has no way to get there at all as Harstem keeps pushing forward. Corrosive Biles will keep on coming down. Finally, a couple of them begin to connect on Harstem's units. We still have those two Immortals that have had, their barriers popped once, but have otherwise been mostly untouched. 31 dead drones. Harstem keeps on backing it up, but honestly, he keeps on trading so well. And with the damage done, Reynor is going to run out of ways to keep on firing through with reinforcing units. Prism's going to take some shots right now. He's a little slow to pull it out of the way, but the third Bile was late, and that means the Prism stays alive as well.
Yeah, now it's actually too far away from the creep, so the Queens can't even close the distance very easily. The Prism in a nice, safe spot. Harstem builds himself a lead. The Carpenter looking for opportunities, sends two more Adept Shades over to that top base. There aren't actually any drones really mining over here, so not too much damage can be done, but it actually draws more of the army out of the way, so he can send two Adepts to the right-hand side. This is exactly what you were praising him earlier about with the Zealot run-bys, Wardy, but with two Adepts instead. He is doing a great job finding a way to just pull Reynor, of all people, a bit apart from multiple different angles.
Reynor has a Spire that's never been used. Harstem is going to set up a defensive Stargate, I believe, against that just in case. He's on his way to +1 in Blink. The pressure will finally lay off for a little bit. Reynor can breathe, and Reynor can also start up now the +2 melee upgrade, as that is not a good time for a lag spike. Not sure who that was, but looks like we will resume. And nothing will be said. Baneling Nest on the way. That was missing, and obviously that would have been huge to clean out the Adepts, but now you're going to get a Bane Nest up when it's more about Stalkers. First Disruptors on the map as well. I mean, Harstem has absolutely... I love the point at which he's transitioned behind this, right? Like, it wasn't immediately he believed in his attack, but he also said, okay, I'm not going to end the game with this, but I'm doing it good enough that it's worthwhile me looking into the future. Now starts a fourth base as well. I mean, I do genuinely love what he's been able to do here.
He's done a phenomenal job with this. This game is actually going really, really well in a lot of ways for Harstem. I totally agree. He maybe look like he's down in a bit in supply, but again, it's just mostly the Roaches and Ravagers that are inflating the supply there for Reynor. He's got 11 Mutas on the way, but as you already pointed out, not only are there Phoenix on the way, we have multiple Stargates that are sorry, actually, oh, did he?
No,
okay.
He just built
second Stargate's finishing up now. Yeah. It's like, he can prepare for this so hard. By the time the Mutas get across the map, I think there will actually be 5 Phoenix.
What a call as well, because he saw the Spire, but obviously he knows Reynor wasn't necessarily using it for a long time, but now he's like, man, I think I did enough where you probably feel forced to use the Spire, right? So now he does set up some Phoenix, and it's the perfect call. Remember, he's going to have Blink right now. He's on his way to +2. I love this. I mean, he's got 3 Phoenix in the main about it before these first Mutas are going to show up and have a terrible time, quite frankly. As they fly in, they're going to start hitting some gates. 4 Phoenix should be able to fight these Mutas a little bit. Obviously, you've got to control the rest of the army at the same time, as we do have Reynor attacking the topside base. The Mutas have backed off. Harstem is going to move into position to deal with this. He does not find a second force field that maybe could have locked in units for the Disruptor shot.
Yeah, but remember, even the Disruptor shot, it's similar to the way that the Mutas are going to force attention onto the Phoenix and means that Harstem has less time to look at his army. The Disruptor is going to force Reynor to look at his army and have less time to micro the Mutas against the Phoenix. So it does go a bit both ways there. And Harstem deflects the attack at the 4th and deflects the Mutas and has a fleet beacon on the way as he gets up additional Colossus. And really, outside of the Mutas and I guess Corrosive Biles, what is there to actually deal with the Phoenix right now? They can just pick away at these kind of expensive Ravagers.
Yep, I love what he was doing with the Biles, though, to kind of force the Phoenix to lift. It took 3 lifts to kill the first Ravager off, but yeah, an Overseer now goes down as well, and these Phoenix just chilling out overhead. Unless you want to come bring the Mutas on top of Phoenix, then yeah, you can't really deal with this at all. Mutas will say, okay, if the Phoenix in the center, maybe we can make our way around the left side, but of course, Stalkers and Blink are in a good place too. Fleet Beacon finishing. Stalkers start to blink on top of these Mutas. They get pushed away. In the center, the Phoenix are once again just going to lift up a Ravager, and the Corrosive Bile does not connect there. Maybe this one will. Nope, that misses as well. Man, we are just bleeding out Ravagers.
we're down to 5 Ravagers, soon to be 4 Ravagers, and that's, I think, like at least 4 Ravagers that just died in the last couple of minutes. A couple of workers are going down to the Mutas, and Bailing run by +2 weapons is not going to allow them to one-shot it, but Bailing still kill workers pretty gosh darn quickly, as do the rest of these units killing that 4th base. It does end up falling as the Mutas are going to just trade against the Phoenix because he is focused on this main army engagement, but despite Harstem losing a lot of economy there, his army remains intact, and frankly, Wardy, can Reynor actually deal with a counterattack right now?
I actually don't think he can. I think Harstem knows he's just killed a lot because he's killed the Mutas, he killed a lot of army, a lot of Banes there as well. The Banes that came from the bottom side, they ran all the way there. That's the reason those probes went down. Yeah, and these Phoenix are just going to immediately go and start trying to get Ravagers again. The more, oh my god, Biled his own Ravager in the end. The more Ravagers you get rid of, the less you can use. A few Lings have just spawned, but they go down. We have more Banes coming up. We don't have a lot of splash damage, but maybe the sheer number of units is enough here from Harstem, who sends again the Phoenix forward and trying to find something extra. He's going to go find this base to the right side, and maybe that's just the strategy right now. You just work base by base and push through this. Reynor's army supply is catching back up, though, which maybe worries me a little bit. We're still making Phoenix as well. I'm not sure if we really need to keep making Phoenix. Like, they're still finding value, just is it enough value to justify more? Reynor starts to counterattack. Harstem gets a Temple Archives going, and he has decided it's time to rebuild the 4th base as well, which he didn't do immediately. So that's something he hasn't had for a little bit now.
Yeah, it's a good question. Is making more Phoenix really the most useful thing right now, or would it even make sense to start adding on carriers or something? I mean, he has the Fleet Beacon, I believe, unless he canceled it or something. No, he has the Fleet Beacon still there. Yeah, unless he feels like he really is just about to be subject to a massive counterattack or something, in which case I get it. Carrier would just be a lot of dead supply for a while. But here we go, big Bailing run by over to this base. But again, if the Bailings are using themselves on this worker count, and even on the Nexus on the north side, that just means that Reynor's army is going to be even smaller for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, now Harstem has to go, right? He just lost both of his bases, so he pretty much just has to send it across the map, and this is where we're going to find out whether this one army can do it or not. There is one Viper out, it's gaining energy, there's a second Viper building, that's going to be huge, but the Phoenix might be able to shut those down as well, remember. There's no guarantee that those Vipers will get close enough to do anything. We lift up a couple of Queens, no transfusions available. The Viper is likely going to find a big abduct. What's it going to go for? The Disruptor Shot does find a Ravager. He actually hits a Blinding Cloud. Harstem blinks forward out of the Blinding Cloud. Lings coming in from the other side. Colossi will do well against those. The Ravagers still getting lifted up by Phoenix. Here comes a massive round of Bailings from the other side, and Harstem's army is melting away. It looks as though Reynor is going to do it. He wins it in the end. My goodness.